When we talk about teams in Formula One, we talk not just about the cars, the staff, and the whole team brand, but we also talk about the drivers of the cars. Some drivers, throughout history, have been intrinsically linked to the cars they drive. When you think of Michael Schumacher, you think of Ferrari. When you think of Nigel Mansell or Damon Hill, you think of Williams, or with Jim Clark, you think of Lotus. Branching out from this idea, many drivers have opened up their own teams throughout Formula One history. I will go through some of the best and worst examples of F1 teams owned by an active driver in the team. Also, I am not counting ex-racers who retired from driving duties and became team principals later in life, such as Ken Tyrrell or Bernie Ecclestone, nor private entries where drivers only ran entries under their own names despite not being in a car that bore their own name. The first example of a driver driving a car they built under their own name is Clemente Biondetti's entry into the 1950 Italian Grand Prix. I've actually already done a video on this topic. If you'd like to check the card in the top right of your screen or in the description, I'll leave the link there. Basically, Biondetti took a Ferrari 166 SC designed for racing in endurance and road races such as the Mille Miglia and Targa Florio and took out the 2-litre V12 engine and replaced it with the engine from a Jaguar XK120, which at the time was the fastest production car in the world. Biondetti's entry into the 1950 Italian Grand Prix was his only race start, and he qualified more than 30 seconds off of pole sitter Juan Manuel Fangio before retiring on lap 17 with engine failure. Now, Biondetti's one-car effort definitely wasn't as organised or successful as the work teams of this era of Formula One, but he was a trailblazer for drivers whose skills went beyond just driving. Towards the end of the 1950s, other drivers dipped their toes into the ownership world, such as Eugenio Castellotti, who ran privateer Coopers, although he never drove the cars himself, so he was never a driver owner. Jean Behra commissioned Porsche to remodel sports cars for use in Formula One, and after his friend and fellow driver Maria Teresa de Filippis failed to qualify for the Monaco Grand Prix in 1959, Behra entered the German Grand Prix of the same year, which was held on the Avus circuit in Berlin. Unfortunately, Behra was killed in the F2 race the day before the main event. Porsche still ran remodelled sports cars under the name Behra Porsche into 1960, but after relative anonymity in the first decade of Formula One, owner-drivers really came into fruition in the 1960s. Fed up with the Cooper Works team's inability to provide competitive machinery, Jack Brabham decided to start up his own team in his own name for the 1962 season. He ran Lotuses for the first half of the season, and in the second half, he ran his own BT3 chassis, picking up 4th in Watkins Glen and Kyalami. 1963 saw Dan Gurney pick up the team's first podium in Spa, and he and Jack picked up 3 more by the end of the season. 1964 saw Gurney win twice in Rouen and Mexico, while Jack got 2 third places. After a relatively quiet 1965 with no wins, 1966 was a big year in the world of owner-drivers in Formula One. Bruce McLaren left Cooper's ailing F1 program to start up his own team, and Dan Gurney left Brabham to co-found All-American Racers with Carroll Shelby. It was a shaky year for McLaren and Gurney, as they only scored 7 points between them across the season as they got to grips with their new teams, but in other news, Jack Brabham had become the first driver to win the Drivers' Championship in a car bearing his own name, and the team also won the Constructors' title. 1967 saw the Brabham team win the Constructors' Championship again as Denny Hulme won his only world title with Jack second. During 1967, Dan Gurney won the Belgian Grand Prix for Eagle, which obviously was another good result for the owner drivers. 1968 saw All-American Racers fall into obscurity, and although Denny Hulme won 2 races on his way to 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, Jack Brabham failed to even get on the podium. Bruce McLaren, however, had got his team in gear. He won the Belgian Grand Prix driving a McLaren, also getting 2 second places in Mont Tremblant and Mexico to champion the cause for his fellow owner drivers. 1969 was a down year as no owner drivers, not Brabham nor McLaren, won a race. Dan Gurney's F1 effort had run out of money, and he went back to the United States in order to focus on the IndyCar branch of his team. After the down year of 1969, the tragic death of Bruce McLaren at Goodwood in June 1970 overshadowed the fact that things were looking up for owner drivers. A 44-year-old Jack Brabham had taken his final Grand Prix win in South Africa, and more excitingly, the 1964 F1 champion and 7-time motorcycle champion John Surtees had started up his own team for which he drove for. Surtees scored the team's first points in Zandvoort with 6th, then got 2 points in Mont Tremblant with 5th, and his teammate Derek Bell got 6th in Watkins Glen. 1971 saw Jack Brabham retire from racing and hand over the reins of his eponymous team to Ron Toranak, and after Bruce McLaren's untimely passing, Teddy Mayer took over the Kiwis' operation. As a result, only one owner-driver remained on the grid, and after a quiet first season, John Surtees' team was on the up. It was the German Rolf Stommelen who scored the team's first point of the season in Monaco of 6th place, then Surtees himself scored 5th place in Zandvoort. Then at Silverstone, the team got its first double points finish as Stommelen and Surtees were 5th and 6th respectively. Despite these results, the highlight of the season was definitely the Italian Grand Prix where Mike Hailwood, driving a Surtees, would finish in 4th place, only 0.18 seconds off of the winner Peter Gethin. He also led 5 laps of that race. 1972 saw Surtees remain the standalone owner driver and his team finished 5th in the standings ahead of established names such as March, BRM and Brabham. Aussie Tim Schenken opened the season with 5th place in the opening round in Argentina, then Andrej de Adamic bettered that result getting 4th in Spain at Jarama. For the rest of the season, however, it was Mike Hailwood who gathered the most of the team's points. 4th at the Belgian Grand Prix in Nivelles-Borla, 6th at Girard, then 4th again at the Oostenrijk-Ring. However, the Italian Grand Prix that year showed both how far the team had come and what their plans were for the future. Mike Hailwood, after finishing 4th in the previous year, finished 2nd in the 1972 race, picking up the team's first ever podium. This race was also John Surtees' final start in a Formula 1 race, as the now 38-year-old champion was taking a backseat having retired from full-time driving at the end of 1971. He had given it up for good at the end of 72. The team moved into 1973 with high hopes, but so did another world champion. Graham Hill had left the Brabham team after the 1972 season to start up Embassy Racing with Graham Hill. Hill ran a single-car team driven by himself, with the single car being a customer Shadow DN1 chassis. The season was a pointless and otherwise difficult exercise, as the team missed the first 3 rounds of the season, then in the rest of the year only finished 2 races in the top 10, those results being a 9th place in Zolder and 10th in Paul Ricard. Despite the dismay of Hill's first foray into a full-time owner-driver role, John Surtees' team had a less successful yet fruitful season. The team downsized from 3 full-time cars the previous year to 2, and new driver Carlos Pache scored 4th place in the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, also getting fastest lap. Then at the Oostenrijk-Ring for the Austrian Grand Prix, Pache stood on the 3rd step at the podium, having again scored the fastest lap of the race. His full-time teammate Mike Hailwood failed to match the Brazilian's results, however, and had a pointless season with the best result of 7th at Monza. Moving into 1974, another Grand Prix driver threw their hat into the ring of ownership, at least partly. At this point in his career, Chris Amon had 5 pole positions and 11 podiums, but was known for being the unluckiest driver in F1 history. Aside from his 5 pole positions, he'd led 183 laps across 7 different times he led an F1 race, but was never able to win one. In his desperation to win a race, he chopped and changed which team he was driving for, and he drove for 13 teams in 13 seasons of F1. In 1974, the team he drove for was a team he ran himself, called Chris Amon Racing. He entered 4 Grand Prix that year with his team, those being the Spanish race at Jarama, Monaco, the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and the Italian race at Monza. After qualifying 24th in Jarama, he retired on lap 22 with brake issues, then in Monaco he qualified 20th before failing to start the race. At the event on the fearsome Nordschleife, Amon failed to qualify as due to an illness he set a time nearly 90 seconds slower than pole sitter Niki Lauda on the usually 7 minutes long circuit. He again failed to qualify for the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and maybe he took this as a sign because Amon shut down his team and joined BRM for the last 2 rounds of the season. Despite Amon's short-lived floundering attempt at team ownership, John Surtees and Graham Hill still had their teams. Surtees ran 2 cars all year in 1974 with a total of 8 drivers chopping and changing seats. For the first 7 rounds, it was Carlos Pache and Jochen Mass who drove for the team, with Pache picking up 4th place and 3 points in his home race at Interlagos. Pache left the team to race the Brabham after round 7 in Sweden, leaving Mass as a sole entry for round 8 in Zandvoort. Jose Dolhem took Pache's place for the round at Dijon, and the man who was both a first cousin and half-brother of Didier Pironi failed to qualify for the race. Derek Bell then took Dolhem's place for the British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch, but also failed to qualify. The pairing of Bell and Mass lasted only 2 races as Mass left the team following round 11 in Germany, with the team then expanding to 3 cars for the next round in Austria, racing Bell, future Grand Prix winner Jean-Pierre Jabouille, and the only driver in F1 history to have a surname beginning with Q, that being Dieter Quester. Both Bell and Jabouille failed to qualify, however Quester made it onto the grid in 25th and last position. In an attritional race, Quester rose to 9th position by the checkered flag, but this would be his only F1 start. On a side note, Quester is still alive today, aged 84, and was still an active driver in other racing series such as touring cars and other classic racing series until 2018. Back to Team Surtees, however, it was Bell and Dolhelm who entered the next race in Monza, although they both failed to qualify. Then at the penultimate round of the season in Canada, Bell was partnered by rookie Helmut Koenig. Koenig finished 10th in the Canadian race while Bell failed to qualify, then Koenig was kept on for the season finale in Watkins Glen as Dolhelm returned to the team for his 3rd attempt to qualify for a race. Both drivers did qualify, with Koenig in 23rd and Dahlhelm, despite qualifying 26th and the first of those technically not allowed to start the race. He was allowed to start the race as a first reserve, whatever one of those is. Koenig's car crashed at the hairpin, and in an eerily similar fate to Francois Severo a year earlier, his car hit the Armco barrier, and while the top section of the barrier remained intact, the impact caused the bottom section of the barrier to buckle. Just like Severe, Koenig was decapitated, and Watkins Glen now had the blood of 2 drivers on their hands. Dahlhelm pulled out the race out of respect for his fallen teammate, and Surtees' season ended on a solemn note. A chicane was installed in the S's at the Glen for the next season, but that would not be the final fatality at the circuit, as JD McDuffie was killed in an accident in a NASCAR race in 1991, prompting the circuit to install the bus stop chicane before turn 5 to reduce speeds. Anyway, back to the driver-owner teams. Surtees obviously didn't have the best of seasons, but we haven't talked about Graham Hill's team yet. After running a 1-car team in 1973, Hill expanded to 2 cars for 1974 as Guy Edwards joined the team. In the opening 2 races of the season in Argentina and Brazil, the team got 2 retirements and 2 11th place finishes. Then the team took only 1 car to the 3rd race in South Africa, with Hill finishing the lone entry in 12th place. Then on his return in Jarama, Edwards failed to qualify before Hill retired from the race on lap 43 due to engine failure. Results momentarily picked up for the team in the next 2 races, as Hill was 8th in Belgium, then finished 7th in Monaco, with Edwards just behind in 8th. The season peaked at the next race in Sweden, as Hill picked up the team's first points ever with a 6th place finish, as Edwards again followed him home to 7th place. A double retirement at Zandvoort preceded a major fall-off in performance towards the end of the season, as although Hill got 2 8th places and a 9th place, those were his only top 10s of the last 7 races. It was even worse for the second seat, as Edwards was dropped after not starting the British Grand Prix at Silverstone and failing to qualify in Germany. One-time race winner Peter Geffen ran a 3rd car for the team in Silverstone but retired from the race, then Rolf Stommelen took over Edwards' old seat for the last 4 races of the season, getting a best result of 11th. It was a pretty dismal year for the owner drivers. Surtees had money issues and the death of a driver looming over his team, while Graham Hill's team had only scored 1 point in 2 years of F1 racing. The driver-owner movement would need a kickstart heading into 1975 to keep its metaphorical train chugging along. It would successfully get that kickstart in the form of the brother of 2-time champion Emerson Fittipaldi. Wilson Fittipaldi had a markedly mediocre career before 1975, and he had become fed up of paying his way into drives, then not being allowed to challenge his teammates, so, with the backing of a sugar and ethanol company, Copa Sukar, Wilson started his own team called Copa Sukar Fittipaldi. The team's first 5 races of the 1975 season were bad, as Wilson only finished 1 race, his home race in Brazil. He would retire from 2 races and not qualify for another 2 of the first 5 events. After that, he qualified for every other race that year, although he failed to start in Austria due to handling issues. Despite finishing 6th of the final 9 races, Wilson only finished in the top 10 once at the final race of the season in Watkins Glen. It wasn't a disastrous first attempt at ownership, but the season was mediocre at best. Meanwhile, Surtees and Hill's teams were still plodding along. Due to financial difficulties, Surtees downsized to 1 car for the 1975 season. Future multiple-time Grand Prix winner John Watson drove the sole chassis for the first 10 races of the season, getting a best result of 8th in the infamous Spanish Grand Prix. In the 10th round at Silverstone, the team ran a 2nd car for Dave Morgan, but then the team didn't turn up to 3 of the final 4 races of the season, only turning up in Austria where Watson got 10th. So, Fittipaldi had a pointless first season, Surtees had their first pointless season. What about Graham Hill's team? Just like they had done the season prior, Hill's team started the season running Lola chassis, with a now 46-year-old Hill racing alongside 1974 recruit Rolf Stommelen. Hill got 10th in Argentina with Stommelen 13th, then Hill finished 12th in Brazil with Stommelen 14th. Hill failed to qualify in South Africa while Stommelen finished 7th in a newer Lola chassis, then Hill gave up his seat to Frenchman Francois Migol for the Spanish Grand Prix at Montjuic, as the team debuted its first in-house chassis, the GH1. The race was marred by controversy as the crash barriers surrounding the circuit weren't bolted together properly and drivers feared for their safety. After Stommelen qualified 9th with Migol 22nd, some incidents on the first lap promoted Stommelen to 4th. When leader James Hunt spun on a patch of oil and crashed, Stommelen took 3rd. Then the front 2 of John Watson and Mario Andretti had mechanical issues of their own, and Rolf Stommelen took the lead of the race on lap 17. This could be it. After 2 years of mediocre results, Graham Hill could prove he was a team owner who was good enough to be on the same level as Jack Brabham, Bruce McLaren or Dan Gurney. He could win his first race as team owner, although he wasn't driving the car. Stommelen would get overtaken by Carlos Pache on lap 22 before Stommelen retook the lead, which he held until lap 26. On lap 26, however, disaster struck. Stommelen's rear wing failed. After spearing into the barrier, the car bounced back across the circuit and Pache, who he'd been battling with, crashed trying to avoid him. Stommelen came across the track and flew into the barrier on the other side of the circuit, killing 2 photographers, a fireman and a spectator. Stommelen suffered multiple injuries and survived, but was obviously out of the race. Had the rear wing not failed, not only would 4 people have survived, but there's a chance Hill's team could have got their first win, or at least their first podium. With Stommelen out of action for the foreseeable future, Graham Hill stepped in to replace him for the next race in Monaco, a race he'd won 5 times before, a record at that time. Hill was the team's only entry and he failed to qualify less than half a second away from the cut-off, but wouldn't start the race nonetheless. Hill then decided it was time to call it quits on his Formula 1 career. He'd amassed 179 starts in his career, the most of any driver, a record that would stand for 14 years until Riccardo Patrese beat it, and he had the longest career in terms of years until Rubens Barrichello came along in the early 2010s. Thanks to increased driver fitness in modern-day Formula 1, 4 drivers have surpassed his near 17-year career, but he still had incredible longevity in an era where his contemporaries died in accidents. With his retirement, he could now fully focus on his team. He kept Francois Migaud for the race following his retirement in Zolder and recruited a young driver called Tony Bryce. After a double-team retirement in Zolder, Australian Vern Schuppan took over Migaud's seat as Bryce continued. Bryce got 6th place and the team's first points finish in Sweden since Hill's 6th place at the same venue 2 years earlier. Then the team went through their 3rd new driver in 3 races as they signed another Australian called Alan Jones for the Zandvoort race. It was Bryce and Jones who ran the next 4 races, with Jones bettering Bryce's result from earlier in the year by finishing 5th on the fearsome Nürburgring Nordschleife in his 4th start for the team, while Bryce got 2 7th place finishes in that 4-race stint. Jones then left the team and Rolf Stommelen returned to the driving seat after 7 races out. He got 16th in Austria but retired in the second to last race in Monza before Bryce was the only Hill car on the grid in the final race of the season in Watkins Glen, but he retired from the race. Nearly 2 months following the race in Watkins Glen, in late November the team did some testing at Paul Ricard and the testing crew and driver Bryce were flying back to the UK with Hill piloting the plane. However, due to thick fog, the plane crashed on approach to landing at Elstree Airfield. All 6 on board were killed, including Hill, Bryce, their car designer, team manager and a mechanic. The team now only had 3 staff, no drivers, and their main marketing pool was now dead. The team therefore shut down as they were unable to continue. With the Hill team now gone, their assets were sold to Walter Wolf Racing, who later became the modern Williams team. So the team that now has 9 Constructors' Championships and many drivers' titles can trace some of its DNA back to Graham Hill's team that he ran. Going into 1976, it was only John Surtees and Wilson Fittipaldi flying the flag for the owners who were drivers. After years of stagnation, tragedy and bad results, the owner-driver corps got its first piece of good news in a while. 2-time champion and reigning runner-up from the year before, Emerson Fittipaldi joined his brother's startup. Maybe he had ambitions to be the next Jack Brabham to win his 3rd title in a car bearing his own name. Emerson's brother Wilson retired from F1 and fellow Brazilian Ingo Hoffmann was signed to drive the 2nd Fittipaldi car. After the first race in Brazil, where Hoffmann actually finished higher than his teammate Fittipaldi in the race, in 11th while Emerson was 13th, Hoffmann would miss the race in South Africa where Emerson finished 7th, but returned for the 3rd round at the first F1 race held in Long Beach. Hoffmann failed to qualify for the race while Emerson would finish 6th in a race that only 10 cars finished, getting the team's first point. Emerson retired early on in Jarama while Hoffmann failed to qualify again. The team's effort downsized to 1 car for 3 races, and although Emerson failed to qualify in Zolder, in Monaco he finished 6th again, getting his 2nd point of the year. After a retirement for Emerson in Sweden, Ingo Hoffmann was back for 1 final hurrah that year in France but failed to qualify again while Emerson retired. Emerson then finished 6th again in Silverstone, but the last 7 races of the season saw him pick up 4 DNFs and a best finish of 9th. 3 different points finishes in your 2nd season isn't too bad, but it definitely was a massive help that they had acquired one of the best in the business at the time to drive their cars. But what about Surtees' team? After having had cash flow issues throughout 1975, Surtees signed a new sponsorship deal with a big company for some big money. The Durex Condom Company offered the team some financial protection and safety, although this would cause problems later down the line. With their newfound backing, Surtees' team would run 2 cars full-time, driven by American Brett Lunger and Australian Alan Jones, who had driven for Graham Hill's team the year before. The team missed the opening round in Brazil, then ran a 1-car effort driven by Lunger in South Africa, finishing 11th. In the next 2 races at Long Beach and Jarama, Jones would pilot a 2nd Surtees chassis, and while Lunger failed to qualify for either race, Jones would finish both races, although he wouldn't be classified in Long Beach. Then at the next race in Zolder, Jones improved on his 9th place finish from Spain by finishing 5th and getting 2 points, the team's first in 2 years. After 3 races of mediocre results, Jones returned to the points in Brands Hatch, finishing 5th again. In Austria, Lunga scored his first top 10 of the year, then leading up to the final race in Fuji, Jones would score 2 8th places in Zandvoort and Watkins Glen. Just like he had done in Zandvoort for Swede Connie Anderson, Lunga would give up his seat to another driver in Fuji. This time it was Noritake Takahara making his F1 debut at his home race. Also, remember how I said earlier that Surtees sponsorship deal caused some problems? Well, then it turns out that the BBC, the only major TV broadcaster in the UK at the time, had an issue with the Durex logo being on the Surtees cars. Therefore, throughout the whole of the 1976 season, the BBC had not broadcast any Formula 1 races because there was the name of a condom company on the side of one of the team's cars. I'm no expert, but with the grainy quality of 1970s television, I doubt that the Durex logos would have been blindingly obvious, and even if they were, Surtees wasn't exactly going to be getting much screen time, if any, due to the competitiveness of the team. Nonetheless, the BBC stayed firm on their boycott of Formula 1, even going as far to ask the team to remove the logos. That was until the final race of the season in Fuji. Everyone knows about the intense title battle and story that was the 1976 Formula 1 season, and it was James Hunt and Niki Lauda who went into Fuji with the chance of winning the title. With so much home interest, given a Brit could win the championship, the BBC elected to broadcast the race as any problems with the Surtees sponsor would be greatly outweighed by the importance of the race and the championship battle. Hunt did eventually win the title, finishing third in Fuji, but in the world of Surtees, while debutant Takahara finished 9th in the pouring rain, Jones got the team's best result of the year, finishing 4th. The 7 points Jones amassed throughout the season with his 3 top 5 finishes put the team 10th in the Constructors' Championship, ahead of the Fittipaldi brothers and Ensign. Going into 1977, both the Fittipaldi and Surtees teams had at least some hype or potential behind them, and there was now a third driver owner in F1. Up until this point in F1, all the drivers in F1 history who either ran their own chassis or ran their own teams were successful. Even if they weren't world champions like Brabham, Surtees or Hill, even if they didn't have any race wins like Jean Barrat or Chris Amon, people were aware that they had great talents behind the wheel. It was maybe a surprise then that for 1977, partnering Surtees and the Fittipaldi brothers as owner-drivers, Arturo Mezzario started up his own team. If you aren't familiar with Arturo Mezzario, he was a driver who up until this point in his Formula 1 career had no race wins, no podiums and only 11 points in his career with the best result of 4th place. It was maybe no surprise then that Mezzario's first season in F1 was a disaster. From 7 race entries, he failed to qualify for 3 races, failed to finish in 3 more races and finished in 14th place in the only race he finished, in Zolder, where he finished 2 laps down on the 13th place driver. There's bad seasons, then there's that. Surely Surtees and Fittipaldi had to have done better. At the opening round in Argentina, only 7 cars finished, and although Ingo Hoffmann failed to finish due to an engine failure, Emerson Fittipaldi finished in 4th place, getting his team's best result in its history. And now you're maybe thinking that the Surtees team capitalised on this attritional race as well, getting in the points when they otherwise wouldn't have expected to. Hans Binder made his 3rd ever F1 start in the season opener in Argentina, but retired due to an accident on lap 18. Vittorio Brambilla, however, did finish the race, although he finished last of the 7th finishers, and was therefore the only classified driver not to score points that day. Fittipaldi went from strength to strength at the 2nd race of the season, their home race in Brazil, getting the closest they'd ever got to a double points finish, as again only 7 cars finished, with Emerson 4th and Hoffmann 7th. Fittipaldi was 5th in the Constructors' Championship after this race, and Emerson was 5th in the drivers' standings. Did Surtees get a similar lucky result in a similarly attritional race? No, of course they didn't. Both Binder and Brambilla retired by lap 30. After the Brazilian race, the Fittipaldi team downsized to a 1-car team, ending Ingo Hoffmann's unsuccessful F1 career to focus on Emerson. After the South African Grand Prix, which actually saw Brambilla score 7th for Surtees, although still not in the points, Emerson Fittipaldi got his team's 3rd points finish in 4 races, keeping the team in the top 5 of the constructors' standings. After a few races of mediocrity for both Fittipaldi and Surtees, at the 7th round in Zolder, Vittorio Brambilla drove his Surtees to 4th place and scored the team's first points of the season. Then, for round 11 at the German Grand Prix in Hockenheim, Brambilla scored 5th and got 2 more points for the team. Emerson Fittipaldi then got his 3rd 4th place of the year in Zandvoort for his family team before Brambilla scored the last points for either owner team that year, with 6th in Canada. Overall, at the end of the season, Fittipaldi were 9th in the Constructors' Championship on 11 points and had a best result of 3 4th places, whereas Surtees were 11th in the standings on only 6 points. Going into 1978, Surtees, Fittipaldi and Mezzario would be joined by a 4th owner driver. Hector Abak had an uneventful Formula 1 career up to this point. The previous year, in 1977, he entered 6 races for the flailing Hesketh team, and he failed to qualify for 5 of those 6 races, retiring in the other. He then started up his own team, presumably because even despite his large funds, no other team wanted to sign the Mexican. He bought a 1-year-old Lotus 78 chassis, which in 1977 had won 5 races in the hands of Mario Andretti and Gunnar Nilsson. In 1978, however, Rybak's first foray into ownership went mostly miserably. In the first 6 races of the season, Rybak only finished one of them, that being the South African Grand Prix, which he finished 10th in. He had to retire from the race in Brazil due to physical fatigue, and in the other 4th races, Rybak failed to qualify for one and failed to pre-qualify for the other 3. After a mechanical failure in Jarama, Hector finished 12th in Sweden before failing to qualify in France for the race at Paul Ricard. 2 retirements at Brands Hatch and at the Österreichring were sandwiched by a 6th place finish at Hockenheim, getting Rybak his first points in F1 and the first for his team. The last 4 races of the season included 2 did not qualify, a retirement at Watkins Glen and an 11th place in Zandvoort. Rybak's first season as an owner driver was definitely a failure. In the same car that won 2 races early in the year in the hands of Mario Andretti and Ronnie Peterson, he had scored a grand total of 1 point. What about the other non-champion team owner, Arturo Merzario? After only running 7 races the year prior, he ran a full season in 1978. In the first 4 races of the season, Merzario retired from 3 of them with mechanical failures and didn't even qualify for the race in Brazil. Then he scored 2 consecutive DNPQs, that's a did not pre-qualify, in Monaco and Zolder. A DNQ, that's a did not qualify, came in Jarama before he finished 8 laps down and not classified in Sweden. A DNQ in France preceded a retirement in Brands Hatch due to fuel system issues, then it was 2 more DNQs in Hockenheim in Austria. He retired in the Netherlands, then in the Italian Grand Prix he expanded to a 2-car entry, the other car driven by Alberto Colombo, who had entered 2 races earlier in the season for ATS. Colombo failed to pre-qualify in Monza while Merzario retired due to engine failure. The last 2 races of the season in Watkins Glen and the Circuit Ile Notre Dame saw the team downsize to just Merzario's entry, and he retired in the American race before failing to qualify in Canada. To summarise the season, the team's cars had failed to pre-qualify 3 times, failed to qualify 6 times, retired from a race 7 times, and was not classified for 1 race due to being 8 laps down at the end. So no classified race finishes, no points, no podiums, no wins, no fastest laps, no championships, nothing. Fittipaldi and Surtees were still plodding along as well, so let's talk about the latter. Vittorio Brambilla came back for his 2nd season with the Surtees team, having scored all of their points in 1977. He was partnered by Brit Rupert Keegan, but to be honest, the first 6 rounds of the season were a write-off. Keegan failed to finish 4 of those first 6 races, failing to start in the one in Long Beach due to a practice accident, and not qualifying for the race in Zolder. Meanwhile, Brambilla failed to qualify for 2 races in Brazil and Monaco, retired in Long Beach and got a best finish of 12th in South Africa. The next race in Spain saw Keegan finish his first race of the season in 11th place with Brambilla 7th. The next 4 races saw Brambilla get 2 more retirements, a 17th and a 9th place, while Keegan got 3 DNQs and a retirement. In an attritional Austrian Grand Prix where Brambilla had won 3 years earlier, he took a 6th place finish and Surtees' first points of the season. Keegan then didn't start in the Netherlands due to an injury, while Brambilla was disqualified for getting a push start. Keegan was replaced by G-Max, also known as Carlos Franchi, for the Italian Grand Prix, but he failed to qualify and he in turn was replaced by future Grand Prix winner René Arnoux for the last 2 races. Also, despite his service to the Surtees team, scoring all its points for 2 years, Vittorio Brambilla was dropped in favour of Beppe Gabbiani, a driver who later raced for Acela in the 1981 season. Arnoux got 9th in Watkins Glen and retired in Canada while Gabbiani didn't qualify for either race. Having suffered with financial problems for the past few seasons, Surtees closed his F1 team down following the 1978 season. He clearly had an eye for talent, having fielded 7 future race winners in his 9-season tenure as boss, along with other racing legends like Mike Halewood and Derek Bell. John was clearly a good boss who punched above his weight financially and who got the best drivers for his machinery. It's just a shame that a legendary name in F1 history couldn't have stayed longer. Despite the post-season crumbling of Surtees, Fittipaldi Automotive was still around. Emerson drove the sole Fittipaldi chassis all year and scored the team's first podium in Brazil with 2nd place. He wouldn't score again until the 8th round in Sweden with 6th place. Then in the last 6 races of the season, Emerson scored points 4 times, including 3 times consecutively at the Hockenheimring and Österreichring with 4th, and in Zandvoort with 5th place. Then at Watkins Glen with 5th again in the penultimate round of the season. The 17 points Emerson got that season got him 7th in the Constructors' Championship, ahead of McLaren and Williams. With Surtees gone, the Fittipaldi team will be joined by the flailing Rybak and Merzario teams, which were both a bit of a laughing stock in modern Grand Prix racing. Let's go over both the team's 1979 seasons. For the first 3 quarters of the season, Hector Rybak drove a new Lotus 79, which had finished 1-2 in the driver's standings the year before. The first 6 races of the season were terrible, as Rybak failed to qualify for 1 race and retired from the other 5. After he missed the Monaco Grand Prix completely, his results slightly picked up with 12th in Dijon and 9th in Silverstone, before he retired in Hockenheim and didn't qualify for the Austrian Grand Prix. After Rybak scored 7th in Zandvoort, it came out that Hector had commissioned Jeff Ferris and John Barnard to build a car for him to use. Influenced and inspired by both the Lotus 79 and Williams FW06, you'd think that with the new Rybak HR01 chassis, Hector's results would pick up. They didn't. In the last 3 rounds of the season, Hector didn't qualify for 2 and retired from the other. He disbanded his team at the end of the year and joined Brabham midway through the 1980 season, partnering Nelson Piquet. What about Arturo Mezzario's team though? After 6 rounds in the 1979 season, he had retired from 2 races and failed to qualify for the other 4. After Mezzario broke his arm during the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, Gianfranco Brancatelli stepped in to replace him, although he failed to pre-qualify for the race. Mezzario was back for the next race in France, but couldn't qualify for any more races that season. With financial concerns halting the development of a new chassis, Mezzario pulled his team out of F1 after 1979, along with Rybak, with only 1 point between them thanks to Rybak and Hockenheim in 1978. This leaves only the Fittipaldi team left to discuss. After opening the season with a 6th place in Argentina, Emerson struggled to keep up in the first part of the season. His best result in the next 5 races was 9th in Zolder, but after that Belgian race, he would retire from the next 6 races consecutively. With those retirements, we were now coming up to the last 3 races of the season. Emerson got 2 8th places and a 7th, while the team entered a 2nd chassis in the last 2 races for Alex Ribeiro, who failed to qualify in either attempt. Emerson's singular point was a step down from 17 points the year prior, and he only got 12th in the Constructors. With 2 flailing owner-drivers gone, Fittipaldi, who now had sponsorship from Skoll Lager, was the only owner-driver team left. For the first time in the team's history, they ran 2 cars for the whole season, with one being driven by Emerson and the other by future champion Keke Rosberg. Keke kicked off his Fittipaldi adventure with a bang in the opening race of 1980 in Argentina, becoming the first driver who didn't have the name Emerson to score points for the team. It wasn't just points he scored though, he stood on the podium in 3rd place after only 7 cars finished the race. In the team's home race in Brazil, Rosberg was 9th when Emerson was 15th, then Emerson was 8th in South Africa while Rosberg retired. Then at Long Beach, Emerson got 3rd place, getting the team's 2nd podium of the year. Then 7th for Rosberg in Zolder was followed by 6th in Monaco for Emerson, getting another point on the tally. After 5 races of disappointing results for both cars, Rosberg finished 5th in Monza, securing 2 more points. They wouldn't score points in either of the remaining 2 races, however the 11 points they did score put them 8th in the Constructors' Championship ahead of both McLaren and Ferrari. However, at the end of that 1980 season, Emerson retired from racing. He cited the danger of the sport as the reason, but later admitted that he was neglecting his personal relationships due to his commitments to the family team. He'd also been outscored by Rosberg, who hadn't done a full F1 season by that point in his career. Emerson moved into the management side of the team alongside his brother, and Brazilian Chico Serra was hired to replace the 2-time champion. The 1981 season went badly, however, as Rosberg only finished 3 races all year, with Serra only finishing 2. A best result from Serra in the opening round of the season in Long Beach with 7th place proved the team had lost competitiveness. They also suffered 13 did-not qualifiers and got a DNQ in 5 races. They weren't classified in the Constructors' standings, and with Rosberg off to Williams for 1982, the team downsized to a single car run by Serra. He scored 17th in the first race in South Africa, then retired in Brazil and didn't qualify for the Long Beach race. After missing the San Marino round due to the FISA-FOCA war and its resulting boycotts, Serra scored the team's first point of the season in Zolder. Serra then failed to pre-qualify at the next round in Monaco before the next 6 races consisted of 2 11th place finishes, 2 retirements and 2 did-not qualifies. 7th in Austria was followed by a DNQ in Dijon, 11th in Monza and another DNQ at the final round in Las Vegas. Suffering financially, the team dropped off the F1 grid for 1983. Of all the post-McLaren and Brabham teams, Fittipaldi did the best, but all the teams who eventually shut down did so due to a lack of money. Fittipaldi was the last team where a driver was either an owner or ran the team. The reason why I didn't document the results of Brabham nor McLaren post-1970 was because although the Brabham team raced until 1992, Jack nor his family had anything to do with the team. It was just Brabham by name, and it was the same for McLaren. In total, There were 11 drivers who started their own F1 teams and at least once drove a chassis bearing their own name. Admittedly, the quality of the teams went on a constant downward spiral, but this is probably due more to the costs of F1 becoming greater and greater rather than the management of the teams declining in quality. Still, without these teams, you can't define these drivers' legacies without them. Whether they spent their worst or best years with their own team, the fact they joined this rare club at all was amazing because team ownership requires a different skill set to driving a racing car. With that being said, I think it's time to wrap up the video. I hope you enjoyed me talking about the history of F1 drivers creating and driving for their own teams. Take a look at the cards on your screen to find yourself another video of mine that you might want to watch, and please remember, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to my channel to see more weekly content, although the videos might not be 7 days apart exactly, as I've just gone back to university and I've now got to make videos alongside my actual studies. Anyways, I'm waffling at this point. Have a good day everyone, and I will see you all soon. I've been Nedso. Bye!